Hi, so we are going to have a look at the origins of the Korean War today. Now, in order to do that, we have to go right back to the beginning. Not too far back, but to 1945 really, to the beginning of the Cold War, which the Korean War was only just a small part of. When we later move on to Vietnam War as well, that is part of the Cold War. We need to have a look at the origins of the Cold War and why that happened to truly understand why the Americans and British were in Korea. Now we've got first of all these three men, and I'll tell you a little bit about them in a second. So we have the Second World War is pretty much coming to a close. The Americans are still fighting in Japan. The Allied forces are pretty much about to occupy Germany. They're moving in on Germany. Germany is a foregone conclusion as to whether Germany will be defeated or not. And these three men decide to meet at a place called Yalta with their generals, and it's a nice jovial meeting. Churchill didn't trust Stalin, but Roosevelt really wanted to get Stalin on side, because he wanted Stalin to help him in Japan. They needed Russia's help in Japan, moving in against Japan in mainland China and also Korea, because Japan had invaded Korea, and that's particularly important and will come into play later on. So we've got these three men. We have, first of all, Churchill. You should all know who Churchill is. Winston Churchill's often seen as the greatest prime minister of our country, which is perhaps a controversial statement. A man who was tough, but also was a fantastic leader and wartime leader, less good as a peacetime leader. Then we have Franklin D. Roosevelt, not to be confused with the other Roosevelt, who was a distant cousin who was president before him. But Franklin D. Roosevelt was an old man. He was dying at this conference. He had brought America from the ashes of the Wall Street crash and the Great Depression, and turned them into the only country to profit from the Second World War. He was a superb diplomat, and he wanted Stalin on side. And I should need to give you no introductions as to who this man is. Joseph Stalin. Now, Joseph Stalin respected the two men sat beside him. He respected Roosevelt. He respected Churchill. They got on as well as one could with incredibly different ideologies, but they had fought for war together. The problem is, as we're about to see, these two men are beholden by democracy, but also Roosevelt is dying. Stalin had no such qualms. He wouldn't kick the bucket until 1953, and he didn't need to worry about any pesky elections. So Stalin is going to be with us all the way through our story. So what is agreed at Yalta? We have the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany. Germany would not be allowed to seek terms. They would only be allowed to take the terms that were given to them. Germany would be split into 4 zones. This is important. This will come into play when we have a quick look at Berlin later on. German reparations would be paid to the USSR. USSR had been devastated by the Second World War, and it was agreed that Germany would pay reparations, would pay money to help them recover. Again, this point is important. Free elections. The USSR agreed to hold free elections. They lied. In the countries they liberated, they just completely lied. They didn't. We get the formation of the UN here. Stalin initially wanted all 16 Soviet Socialist republics to help make up the USSR, because it was several countries, not just one, which was denied. But instead we start to get the idea of the UN Security Council and the people who have the right to veto. This would be France, the UK, the USSR and the USA, who would make up the UN and make up the countries with a veto. We had Stalin agreeing to fight against Japan. This is what Roosevelt wanted. He wanted Stalin to fight against Japan, and he got that. Stalin agreed that his soldiers would move in on Japan. Stalin wanted this as well. He wanted in on Japan, just like Roosevelt and Churchill were moving their soldiers on Germany. He wanted to move his soldiers in on Japan and expand. And then finally, Nazi war criminals would be tried. Now we move on to the Potsdam Conference. This is the last of the big conferences. Happened in August 1945, from July to August, and happened towards the end of the war. You'll notice a couple of new faces here. These three faces will see us through to the Korean War. We have Clement Attlee. He replaced Churchill partway through this conference. He was voted in. He was a Labour leader, left wing, brought in the NHS, hated communists, but Stalin didn't respect him as much as he respected Churchill. We have Truman, perhaps one of the most inexperienced people to become president. The last time Truman had been outside America, he was fighting on the front in the First World War. This guy doesn't do foreign policy, and he came into this conference all guns blazing, wanting to take the fight to the communists and show them just who was boss. He wanted to show them that he was tough. He was tough on communists, and this is going to be a running theme. Truman sees people who would accuse him of being weak, and he goes, right, I need to be tough on communists. So he comes in wanting to pick a fight with Stalin, who is sat there looking very happy. He's just won the war. He's about to get a load of new land to add to his growing empire.